So some are unusually strong, others fast. Some have big horns, others have necks 15 or 20 feet long. I am, of course, not talking about bosses or job applicants. I am instead talking about the animals that I watched on a non-hunting safari in Botswana in southern Africa 2 years ago. What do all of these animals have in common? To survive and thrive, they use camouflage. Well, guess what? So do. Hello? Speaking of camouflage, well, guess what? So do human beings. The average person tells 3 lies per 10 minutes of conversation. And the biggest lies in life are actually the ones we tell ourselves. I look really good in this suit. I'm having a good day. I aced that job interview, and so forth. But the reality is we do spin, deflect, hint, and hold back in life. So my very first theme here for you is that words are not enough. They are a very slippery medium. If you have never been lied to in life, you are either extremely lucky or you're not paying attention. One or the other, but this is the human predicament. So what I want to talk about is a way to get a better feel for the people you hire, a better sense of how you manage them, a better sense of how you are building emotional equity with your employees and with your customers in a way that is more reliable than depending on words themselves. That's where we are headed in this conversation. So this is not in isolation. The Goldman Sachs firm in New York has decided that they need to move on. They have traditionally gone for Harvard and Yale graduates, and they thought, well, if we get really smart people, we'll be a really great firm. And what they've come to realize instead is that they don't have loyalty from these people, that this is becoming more and more of a problem. They don't have emotional engagement. They don't have loyalty. Loyalty is a feeling. It's a feeling. I'm with you, you're with me, we are in this together. You cannot get to loyalty without improving your emotional intelligence. Now, I would suggest that where Goldman Sachs is so far is merely a half step. If this is the problem, this is the half step toward a solution, because what they are doing is they are capturing video they can go back later on. Now, I don't know how precisely they're studying the video beyond the words. I hope they are, for their sake, but I suspect that they may not be. And if they do try to do anything additional, I suspect it may be this, which is sentiment analysis. You may have heard of this. It is software that tries to understand how you're feeling from the words you use. The problem, however, is that it's not very accurate. People don't think their feelings. They feel their feelings. And our words, our language abilities, reside in the rational part of the brain, not the emotional part of the brain. So you can't really get there through words. Furthermore, the software is not very accurate. I actually have met with the London police chief. They have a lot of interest in getting to the truth because people can live or die if you do not get it right. The best software they could find was 56% accurate. 56%, barely above chance. That is not good enough in life and death. That is not good enough in romance. That is not good enough in business, as far as I'm concerned, at least. So let's move from problem to partial solution. Let's move over to a real solution. And here's where I need my good friend, my video assistant, because we're going to go to the first videotape, because there is another language besides words, and that's where we're headed in this conversation. So when you're ready, we will try this out. Yeah, next slide, sorry. Let me do my part here.
So, Riley, how was the first day of school?
Fine, I guess.
Did you guys pick up on that?
Sure did.
Something's wrong. Signal the husband.
Uh-oh, she's looking at us. What did she say?
Oh, sorry, sir. No one was listening.
Is it garbage night? We left the toilet seat up. What is it, woman? What?
I'm joy. This is sadness. That's anger.
What?
This is disgust. And that's fear. We're Riley's emotions. These are Riley's memories. They're mostly happy, you'll notice, not to brag.
I wanted to maybe hold one.
What happened? Sadness?
She did something to the memory.
Is everything okay?
I don't know.
Take it back, Joey.
Trying.
Joy, no,
Let
wait.
go.
The core memories.
Can I say that curse word now?
What do we do now?
Nothing's working. Why isn't it working?
We have a major problem.
Oh, I wish Joy was here.
We can fix this. We just have to get back to headquarters.
That's long-term memory. You could get lost in there.
Think positive.
Okay, I'm positive you will get lost in there.
What was that? Was it a bear?
There are no bears in San Francisco.
I saw a really hairy guy. He looked like a bear.
This place is huge. Imagination Land? No way. Dream Productions? Rainbow Unicorn? She's right there. I loved you in Fairy Dream Adventure Part 7. Okay, bye. I love you. You can't focus on what's going wrong. There's always a way to turn things around. It's broccoli.
Congratulations, San Francisco. You've ruined pizza.
Who's the birthday girl? Brain freeze!
Hang on. Riley, here we come.
So emotions are something we are vaguely aware of. We can say someone is a hothead because they're angry and so forth, or a sad sack because they're sad. But historically, I don't think in business we've begun to be particularly emotionally illiterate, or literate rather, or respectful of emotions. Because the truth is, emotions influence our decision making, they influence our behavior, and I would suggest that most people have only a slight awareness, really, of how emotions work. And there is a culprit, there is a bad person in this story. And that person would be René Descartes, the famous French philosopher, who back in the Enlightenment era, 300 years ago, said, "I think, therefore I am." He happens to be dead wrong. What we have learned from the last 25 years of brain science, brain scans, is that we are profoundly emotional people. I am out to restore humanity to business. We are indeed in the era of people to people, human to human, but we have always been in the era of human to human. We have just not acknowledged it. Here is the stunning statistic that 18 years ago caused me to launch my company and to have worked with nearly half of the top 100 companies in the world. The conservative estimation is that 98% of our mental activity is subconscious. 98%. We can't even possibly be rational because we're not aware of most of what's going on to us and how we respond to it. We also have a three-part brain. We have a very basic reptilian brain that's devoted to processing visuals, most of all. About a third of the brain looks at visuals, processes visuals subconsciously. Then we have an emotional brain. And yes, we do have a rational brain, but it came really late in evolution. And the emotional brain, get a load of this, the emotional brain sends 10 times as much information to the rational brain than the rational brain back to the emotional brain. In other words, it's a trade imbalance. The emotional brain is China, and the rational brain is Cuba. And it's a good idea to keep that in mind if you want to be successful in life, because you don't get the chance to rewire human nature. So the historical view would have been, okay, Descartes' right, I think, therefore I am, and we have Rodin's famous sculptor, The Thinker. What we've learned from brain science is that we're a bit more like Homer. We actually make decisions out of altruism, greed, laziness, stupidity, all of us, me included. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, it's just reality, and the best idea is to deal with it rather than imagine it's something other than it is. So that's where I want to start, and with my good friend, we're going to go on to the next piece of video to start to put all the pieces of this puzzle together. So next video, Minority Report.
A road diverges in the desert. Lexus. The road you're on, John Anderton, is the one less traveled. Make sure you are on time.
Good evening, John. You can move the old-fashioned
John Anderton.
One-night stands provides gourmet cuisine.
John Anderton! You could use a Guinness right about now.
Stressed out, John Anderton.
Escape from it all, Harrison. Get away, John Anderton. Forget your troubles. What's
So that's Tom Cruise in Minority Report, and the point here is that there are cameras embedded all over the place. And I'm here to tell you that the truth is, and it's both promising in business, as well as I admit, a bit scary, is that this is where we are headed. I know from having lunch with the London police chief that they now have cameras throughout the underground in London. Lots of cameras. And they are monitoring, and so far what they're good at is recognition, facial recognition. They can pick out your identity from a crowd very quickly, side glance, they can still pick it up. They are now probably at 90% accuracy at quickly picking out your face, tying it back to a database, and figuring out almost in a nanosecond who you are. What they do not yet know, however, is what is called emotion recognition, or I use the term facial coding. They can know who you are, but they don't yet know how you feel. But that is where we're moving. Quite honestly, Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, all of them are at work on automating facial coding. You can mark my words. We are sitting in 2016. Maybe by 2020, definitely by 2025, what I'm telling you about here today, maybe the first time ever for you, is going to be pervasive in society. You will go to a hospital, and the nurse will know to come back to your unit because they can see an unusually strong amount of fear, for instance, because you know your medical condition is worsening. You will have a car that knows you have road rage, and quite honestly, unless you increase your emotional intelligence, the car may prove to be more intelligent than you and try to intervene to protect you from doing something crazy behind the wheel of the car. In business, yes, there will be many, many opportunities to use this. So, this is an example. George Orwell, the famous writer, said, by the age of 50, a man has the face he deserves. Same is true of a woman. Because we have muscle memory, we have signature expressions. I was in Holland, I was on national TV. They said to me, we have 3 minutes of videotape of the Prime Minister. What we want you to do is look at the video, figure out his personality, and the implications for how he governs the country. I said, sure, breeze. I have never laid eyes on the Prime Minister before. You made the video, not me, and I've never done this, but we can try it. So we set in, and a minute and a half in, because the video was very good, I said, you can stop the camera. I think I know who the guy is. They said, you do? I said, I believe I do. They said, okay, go ahead and answer our questions. I proceeded to do so. They said, that's amazing. We think that's exactly who he is and how he governs. And then they said, if you don't mind, we have 2 other members of the coalition government who I also got right. taking less than 3 minutes, because every second of video is 30 frames. And the face has 43 different muscles that move, that give away how someone is feeling. We all know the term, I'm sure here in Romania as well, actions speak louder than words. Now, you can go with the words if you want. I've been on the planet a few days. I prefer action, what people do. And so these muscle activities in the face are indeed action. And they tell you how the person you are talking to feels in that moment, feels about the comment you just made, feels about the comment they made, feels about the atmosphere in the room, whatever the case may be. So Orwell was onto something. So was Malcolm Gladwell. As he said, there is a lot of information in the face. There is, of course, your race, your gender. There is perhaps how beautiful or handsome you are. We also have 4 of our 5 senses in the face: smell, sight, hearing, and so forth. I mean, it is really the centerpiece of human beings. There is so much opportunity there, and so often we just go with the words instead, and we miss all these opportunities to understand what's happening. So let's keep talking about this. Here are the implications in the workplace, in HR, for instance. Yes, you have your immediate emotions. You can respond to what's happening in the moment. But this goes so much deeper than that. There is your personality, your character traits. Over time, if you index high, if you average high on a certain emotion, that says something about who you are. If you hardly ever show a certain emotion, that says something about who you are. If you don't show emotion, that says a lot about who you are. I have for the networks, I stopped doing it because it was too depressing, but I used to watch criminals for them, people who had killed their wives, other people, and so forth. And one of the really odd things about these criminals is they would not emote in the way that you and I do. If you suddenly mention a gruesome murder, I think most of us would feel something. These people did not. And that's a clue as to someone you might not want to hire, actually, among other things. Also not date nor marry. Your value system is very emotional. Your value system, we heard this from the last speaker, and it's very true. Your value system, and we heard it from others on the stage, your value system is who you are. It's how you see the world. You can't back off from it. You can try to fake it, but it's really who you are. And your emotions related to your value system is a really good way of understanding who you're dealing with. You know, it just really zeroes in. So we have one more piece of video, and now we're going to close up the whole puzzle piece because I've told you words aren't enough. I've told you emotions are really important. And then the question is, okay, so what is facial coding? And how do I actually understand this better? And so here from Lie to Me is a promotional video that they have more money than I have at Fox. So they have better production values than I can do. So this is my best way of showing you quickly what facial coding is.
I've instructed my client to remain silent. He's not going to talk.
Oh, it's okay. That's okay. I don't have much faith in words.
Sorry, I think he's going to start it over with a louder volume.
Statistically speaking, average person tells 3 lies per 10 minutes conversation. And granted, it's just regular people. We haven't studied in people who are planning to firebomb a black church. Could skew differently.
We don't have time for this scientist to talk to the guy. We went at him for 4 hours and got nothing.
Now, the FBI knows you want mass casualties. So right now, ATF is searching every inch of the 2 largest black churches in the state. FBI got it wrong. Well, there's a shocker.
Not one of those 2 churches.
Maybe you want
in one of the smaller churches, one of the black suburbs.
You know what you're talking about.
Don't respond. What do you say ATF starts with Southbridge? No, I'm only kidding. We're gonna skip that one. We're gonna focus on Lawton. You feel good about that? That's it, Lawton. Going after a church in Lawton.
That accusation has no basis.
What do you mean? You just told me. The ATF found a pipe bomb in a church basement in Lawton an hour later.
DOD friend of mine said this guy's a total nut job. Heard he spent like 3 years in the African jungle with some primitive tribes studying their eyebrows.
What's his reaction to my statement? Right now, ATF is searching every inch of the 2 largest black churches in the state. Now, what you just saw there was a brief expression of happiness on his face, which he was trying his best to conceal. It lasted for less than a fifth of a second as what we call a micro-expression. Now, look at his mouth. The suspect is secretly happy about the locations we are searching, which tells me we have the wrong locations. Now I tell him of our new plan, and...
You know what you're talking about.
Classic one-sided shrug. Translation, I have absolutely no confidence in what I just said. The body contradicts the words. He's lying. Yeah.
When you accuse a suspect and he acts surprised, is there a way to tell if it's real or if he's just trying to look innocent?
Now, that's real surprise. Lasts for less than a second when it comes across the face. But if your suspect is surprised for more than a second, he's faking it. He's lying. Now, I call out that his target is actually Lawton, and watch it again. Concealed scorn. One personal tip, you see this micro-expression in your spouse's face, your marriage is coming to an end. Trust me. Yeah.
Don't these micro-expressions vary depending on the person?
Let's leave this up, and we'll go to the Cato Kalin footage from the OJ trial.
Mr. Kalin, you got a lot of money for your appearance on Current Affair, didn't you?
Yeah. Scorn. Scorn. Huge scorn. Shame, shame, and shame. Contempt. These expressions are universal. Emotion looks the same whether you're a suburban housewife or a suicide bomber. The truth is written on all our faces.
And indeed it is. And the person who first realized this was none other than Charles Darwin. In his work on evolution, he essentially said to himself, why do we have emotions? What adaptive advantage do they give us? And if they didn't, they would have been weaned out of us over the course of evolution. So Darwin did not need the brain scans that came 100 years later to grasp a fundamental truth, which is, again, that we have always lived in the era of human to human in business, always. So that's the first person. When I started my company, Charles Darwin was not available for a conversation. Fortunately, a man named Paul Ekman, who was the inspiration for Lie to Me, was. I went and met with Paul, learned it from him. Over the course of about a dozen years, he systematically figured out which muscle movements correspond to which emotions. But Paul had no interest in business. He is a psychologist. So I did bring it into business. I have 10 US patents and have over a lot of applications in lots of ways tried to bring this to bear to help companies get closer to their consumers and for employees to get a better sense of what workplace they have, what engagement they truly have, what loyalty they have, what are those relationships. These are all possibilities once you take emotions seriously and once you have a scientific tool that lets you get to specific emotions, because they're different, and lets you quantify the emotions involved. So this is widely accepted. I guess I'll leave it at that, but there is lots of research behind this. There are some practical issues. I've already told you about privacy. There is also the issue, of course, of plastic surgery. While Michael Jackson was alive, I would have a very hard time facially coding Michael Jackson in the later parts of his career. So there are some limitations. There might be one more. Despite the Lie to Me title to the TV series, There is no lying muscle in the face. It is not that simple. There are certain things that tend to be more common. But if there was one muscle movement, surely every politician in America and Romania would head to the plastic surgeon tomorrow to have that one muscle disabled. But it's not quite that simple. So let me just momentarily touch on the fact that, yes, we do have a presidential race in America. Most of us would believe in America that they're not terribly honest. Donald Trump gets caught by the fact checkers. Donald Trump's most significant emotion, by the way, is disgust. That his upper lip curls, his lower lip pulls down. This is probably tied in the fact that he is a germaphobe. He does not shake hands with people. He says you're fired. He's expelling you. He calls women all sorts of unfortunate names. There is a very long tendency that this is the emotion that defines Donald Trump. We will discover in less than a month whether we fire him in addition to him firing us. The other candidate is Hillary Clinton, and Hillary has a complex relationship with the truth, shall we say. And as a facial coder, one of the most obvious signs of that is that, quite honestly, any natural expression is like a wave that breaks on the Black Sea coast. It gathers, it has a peak, and it lets go. That is a natural way that an emotion shows. When I did a lot of this in 2008 for the networks, I said that what Hillary actually had was a guillotine smile. When she is done with the smile, it drops off her face. There is no natural flowing away, it's just, oh, I'm done with that now. So there are problems on both sides, but I believe in Romania you also have the problem of having to decide to vote for the lesser evil. In many cases, we now get the same problem. So, I mentioned automation earlier. I still do the work manually with my staff because it's about 90-some% accurate. The most accurate stuff out there so far is only about 50%, very close to the sentiment software, but it will improve. Again, we go out 4 years, you go out 10 years. I believe we're going to see this really being embedded into all sorts of things, including robots in our houses, which again, if we're not careful, could be more emotionally intelligent than we are. So it's a good idea to try to keep up so you're not obsolete. When the mouth moves, it becomes even more difficult to know what's going on because a lot of our muscle activities around the mouth, the software will take even more time for that than simply seeing your face in a shopping mall and so forth, a la Minority Report. So let's talk about some diagnostics briefly. So some of you were kind enough to complete the survey. I am at work on a book on famous celebrities in America. It'll be called Famous Faces. It will be out next February. In the meantime, two things. One is those who published or helped me with the survey, you can go to my website, SensoryLogic, www.sensorylogic.com next week, and I will post the results for how you reacted, how you tried to evaluate the emotions of the celebrities. I'll give you just two for now. Marilyn Monroe. About 40% of you at the most were accurate. Marilyn Monroe tends to index high on joy, which is the most happy version of happy, where the muscle around the eye relaxes and you get the twinkle in the eye. And she also indexes high on fear. So about 40% of you got that right. If we switch genders and professions, about 30% of you got Bill Gates correct. Bill Gates tends to have low-grade happiness and show a lot of contempt. That he doesn't respect others, maybe because they're not as rich, not as smart, whatever the case may be. But that is the emotion that he tends to show. So every emotion, as I said earlier, has its own meaning. Happiness, intense happiness, can be a wonderful emotion in that research now shows that really happy people tend to be more creative. They come up with more superior solutions more quickly. The downside of being really happy is you don't pay attention to the details. Sometimes you think everything's fine or will turn out fine and you don't take care of the details. Every emotion essentially has an upside and a downside to it. Now, surprise at the bottom of my chart here is a very nice emotion because it means you're paying attention. Among the ways we show surprise is our eyes literally go wider. We are taking in more information. As I told you earlier, a third of the brain is devoted to processing visuals. So eyes open, more opportunity to understand your environment. If we go on to the negative emotions, again, they all have their specific meanings or implications for them. Contempt might sound like an entirely negative emotion, but it also can show confidence that I can beat the opponent. I'm better than them, tougher, stronger, faster, that I can do that. On the other hand, contempt doesn't work so well for marriages, as you saw from the video. It is the most reliable indicator that your marriage will fail because it means you don't respect the other party. Now imagine in a work environment what this means for a leader and the people who report to the leader. We're all facial coders, quite honestly. I might be better at it. I've done it longer. I was an art history minor in college. I lived in Italy as a boy where I had to read nonverbals. But we're all facial coders. And I think we, in a meeting with someone who shows contempt for us, we pick that up. We know we're not being respected or liked, and the easy thing to do is to shut down, is to stop providing information to that leader. And a leader who doesn't have their pulse, the pulse of the company, is in trouble. So there is a detrimental effect to showing contempt. I have done work in pro sports. This is front page coverage, New York Times, for my work in pro sports, because when you are spending not just, tens of thousands of dollars, but millions of dollars on somebody, you probably want to get it right. And it's difficult because, honestly, the athletes, just like a job applicant, are trained in what to say by their agent. So they say all the right things. They use camouflage. It is probably not 3 lies per 10 minutes of conversation. It's probably 25. Because an NFL quarterback or anybody in the NFL has about an 8-minute interview. That's how long the interviews go. 8 minutes, over and done. So we have, for instance, and the interpreters maybe can help us out here or not, but what you have on the right side is we went ahead and looked at famous quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks. This is the most important position in football. You are the brains, you are the leader of the team. And we found that their draft choice, whether we said, okay, this is going to be a great player, we will take him number 1 in the draft versus, he's not so good, we'll take him 20. There was almost no correlation between how well the player has performed on the field and their draft choice. Almost no correlation at all. What we've been able to do is go through and develop a fairly strong correlation by looking at the emotions that are most common in successful quarterbacks in the NFL. And just like the Dutch Prime Minister, we're not watching hours of videotape. We take 4 minutes per season after a winning game and after a losing game and put it together, and that's enough information for us to get a pretty strong correlation, actually. Shark Tank, I think you have a program similar to this in Romania. We were able to have a 80% accuracy rate whether or not the investor was going to go for the pitch of the entrepreneur. Not on what they said, what they showed on their face. Was I showing Donald Trump like disgust about the entrepreneur's idea? Was I showing something else instead? We've even gone to look at people subject to scandals, CEOs and day traders who have made disastrous deals. We are just starting. We have here, this is data from about 100 people, but we're already seeing some separations. One of them, which would surprise you, is that the trustworthy leaders show more sadness. And I think you made this point earlier, because sadness actually slows you down. Sadness makes you reflect more. And it's kind of nature's way of saying, that didn't turn out so well. So before you rush into the next mistake, reflect on it a bit further. And you might get a better outcome. So we are looking for things like that. We have looked at couples. Now, we've already done speed dating. I don't know if you have this in Romania, but in the US, you sit across from someone and you get like 3 minutes, and then you write down whether you'd like to have a second conversation with that person, male or female. When we tried it, we had 100% accuracy, whether the man or the woman wanted a second conversation with the other party. So then we decided to move on to marriages. So I'm going to show you 2 results because I think this is important in business. Gallup did a large survey and they concluded that most employees do not leave a company, they leave a boss, they leave a manager, that relationship is corrosive, not respectful, negative in some fashion. So a marriage, relationship, boss to worker, relationship. I think if you can see the chart at all, you can see that we have a problem here because the woman in this marriage isn't very happy. The top 2 levels of happiness are entirely missing. Instead, what you have is a very large contempt score of 14%. And the question I would have had was, does her husband realize this? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't, but if I'm in the workplace, do I realize that a manager is not successful and I could have a whole department that's underperforming or going to leave because we can't identify what's the emotional dynamic, and no one's going to tell us because everyone's too polite, too nice, but it's going on. Here's another one where we asked them what were they most looking for in their partner. And the woman was most looking for someone who was smart and competent in her husband. But the blue score, which I can read the chart more easily than you, is actually a negative number. So it's not working so well. And there are other ways in which the husband is dissatisfied. Next door to me in Minnesota live 2 psychologists. And what they told me is that most psychology interventions do not work. And the reason is they get involved in trying to save the marriage about 5 years too late. So I think much more successful in business is to understand where something is trending to, catch it earlier than later, not lose all that terrible lost productivity, bad feelings, disloyalty, people leaving the company, turnover, etc. So really quickly in conclusion, I am aware that I'm in a former communist country, and I will be provocative and tell you that I am a Marxist. I am a Groucho Marxist. Because Groucho Marx said, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? And I think that in any interview, any situation, negotiations, it does not matter, observing more would help you a lot. And facial expressions are different than body language. Body language is affected by gender and by culture. I mentioned earlier that I lived in Italy as a boy. So of course, if I am stuck in traffic in Rome and I do this over and over and over, it does not mean I love you. It means something quite different. Body language is different by societies. A hand gesture that is okay in Brussels will get you killed in Palermo. So you have to be careful. They can also put out the hand gestures in a fake way much more easily, because I did not mention 2 important things about facial coding. One is it's universal. Even a person born blind emotes the same way as you or I. A child by 9 months of age has all the core emotions on their face. The other thing is that the face is the only place in the body where the muscles attach right to the skin. Quick, real-time data. Nobody plays poker with me. Okay. Second thing, if you take this on, I spent some of my emphasis on hiring, but this goes throughout the workplace. So just the last couple of slides. One is, if you are training people, it is helpful to know early on, because I believe there are essentially 3 kinds of employees who go to training. The people who are using it as a vacation, the people who feel like they're trapped and they have to go, and the people who are actually enthusiastic about it. But there are often people in the other 2 camps. When you get to your annual review, I don't know about Romania, but in America, people hate their annual review. And really all they're listening for is a number, usually, like how much more money will I get? And that's the only thing they take in. And I think you should have two separate conversations. One is about the relationship and the work, and then maybe a week later you can finally talk about the money, because otherwise everyone's just waiting to hear the number. And that's not good communication. The last thing, which is really important, is, of course, we live in a very turbulent, changing business environment. There are lots of mergers and acquisitions. There are lots of reorganizations. And they go on all the time, and they mostly fail. The research indicates that probably at least 6, if not 7 out of every 10 mergers or acquisitions do not get their financial results. And I think there's a very simple reason for that, actually. Sure, there's the marketplace and rivals and so forth, but my experience from corporate life is that the people involved in this focus on the law, the legal part, they focus on the operations and regulations and so forth, finance. They don't pay attention to the people part. And that's my last point again, is we are people. And human beings don't handle stress very well. And usually what happens in a merger and acquisition is that the leadership holds back the details, but the rumors start that something's going to happen. And the rumors leak out and leak out and leak out. And we can't take that very well. I was listening on the radio one day, and they said, society is a 72-hour construct. And I went, what in the world are you talking about? And their point was that after 72 hours, you don't care about the laws, you're just hungry. You want to get food for yourself and your family, and rule and order be damned. And that's about how long most human beings can go with stress before it really starts to take a toll on them. So as a worker, the truth is that the merger and acquisition should be shared more than it is. It should focus on the human beings more than it does, and it should be more humane, and it should move more quickly and in the suspense. That would lead to more successful mergers and acquisitions. So that's what I have. I think I've taken up most of my time, unfortunately, but if you have questions, wherever you want to go in the remaining time, that's fine with me.